If you ever wanted to play a storm conjuring mage in Remnant 2, then you're going to love this build. It combines sandstorm, firestorm, and thunderstorm, or at least that's what I'm going to call Way of Keola, to give you that storm conjuring fantasy, and it does a lot of damage. This build is amazing solo, and it's even more potent in co-op because we're sharing health regen, increased skill cooldown, movement speed, and more by combining Invoker and Handler archetypes together. The name of the combined classes is even called Visionary Spirit of Friendship. So if you want to have the spirit of friendship and give your friends movement speed and skill cooldown, all that good stuff, you definitely want to check out this build. I've been running it solo, and it is such a nice quality of life to have good movement speed and just be popping our skills and mods all the time. Mobs and bosses on Apocalypse difficulty are a breeze on this build. With the movement speed that we get and the damage that we get, you're going to be farming those aberrations, getting corrupted shards, whatever you want to do in Remnant 2. You're watching some clips of bosses and mobs on Apocalypse difficulty right now, but I'm also going to put some full fights at the end of this video if you want to see a true kind of showcase of the build at Apocalypse difficulty. But let's dive into the build itself, and I'm going to show you guys why Invoker and Handler synergize so well together. Alright, here is my Visionary Spirit of Friendship, and we've got Invoker in our first slot because we want to get those double skill procs, and then we've got Handler in our second. We're using Way of Keola for our skill. Like I said, the Thunderstorm, it's going to drench the enemies, it's going to give them lightning shocks. Those lightning shocks are going to do a lot of damage, and they're going to crit a lot. And then over on the Handler side, we're actually using Support Dog. Now this is going to give us 0.25% max health per second when we're next to our dog. However, when we use the skill, which we're going to get 2 of, remember, it's going to give us 2% of max health per second and 25% increased movement speed to all allies within 30 meters. And this is going to last 32 seconds, and we get 2 charges of it, and they come back really quickly. So you're basically going to have Support Dog up at all times. And then let's talk about our perks. Our Prime perk for Invoker doubles our base skill charges, like I mentioned, and skill activation is going to reduce all your skill cooldowns by 10%, making sure that we have a lot of good uptime. Moving over to Invoker, let's take a look at our perk passives. We've got a damage perk that gives us increased skill damage by 30%, elemental damage by 15%, and skill and elemental crit chance by 5%. This is going to be really good for our weapon mods, which we'll talk about in a second, and it's also really good just for Way of Keola. So now let's look at the damage perk for Handler, because I want to show you guys how these kind of fit hand in hand, no pun intended. But for our damage perk over on Handler, we've got Pack Hunter, gain 30% range, melee, and skill damage, and 5% range, melee, and skill critical chance while companion is within 60 meters. So we're going to get skill critical chance and skill damage with our Handler, which we're getting elemental critical chance. So those lightning strikes from our Way of Keola are going to be doing a lot of damage. However, our guns are still going to do a decent amount of damage because we are getting 30% range damage and range critical chance. So I feel like those synergize really well with each other. And then our team perk for Invoker reduces skill cooldowns by 1% and heals 2% of max health once every 3 seconds for allies while an Invoker skill is active, which we're going to have that Way of Keola skill up almost all the time, and so this is going to heal us and our allies and give us more skill cooldowns so we can just continuously be popping both of our skills. So that's really amazing. And don't forget too that Support Dog is going to heal us and our allies as well. So our allies are getting health from Communion and also from Support Dog. Over on the Handler side, we're going to get Spirit of the Wolf team perk. This gives us 10% movement speed, and all allies within 15 meters are going to gain our movement speed if faster, reduces the stamina cost of actions for allies. This is just more movement speed because we're also getting movement speed with Support Dog, so you're going to be zooming around the map with your allies. Obviously, this isn't going to be a movement speed build. This is not meant for like a movement speed build for a speed run or something like that, but it's just such a nice quality of life when you're running around with your friends. Moving back over to Invoker, we've got our utility perk, which increases our movement speed by 5%. So there's some more movement speed for our Handler to share with our allies, and damage reduction by 5% while an Invoker skill is active. Damage reduction is just icing on the cake. Moving over to the teamwork utility perk on handler side, where you're going to get 30% increased revive speed and you receive 50% less damage, just more quality of life. Now moving on to the relic perk, we're not really going to be using our relics ever, so these really won't come into play. However, you could run it a little bit different and use your relics. I just don't like using relics that much because it takes so much time, but using a relic is going to extend the duration of your active invader skills, so that could be really nice for all those other buffs that we mentioned. Over on handler, using a relic fully restores your companion's health and grants them damage and damage resistance. We're not really focused on the dog doing damage, even though the dog does bleed and the dog does decent damage because we have a lot of all damage in this build. And then finally for the traits, we're getting gifted, increasing skill duration by 30%, and kinship reduces friendly fire damage dealt and received by 80%, which you definitely want this because we are using firestorm. Up next, let's take a quick look at our traits. We've got gifted kinship. I take fortify and strongback always just because it allows me to have more armor for the weight. I like being at a medium roll. You guys can pick whatever armor you want. It's up to you. Swiftness we want for the movement speed. Obviously, Flashcaster is great because Way of Kaola kind of takes a while to actually cast. And then we've got vigor, spirit, expertise, we got bark skin, and amplitude. Amplitude I would say is a must-have on this build. It just makes the aura AoE size of all of our mods, all of our skills, everything benefits from this trait, so it's a must pick up for us. The others you can kind of pick and choose. So finally, let's talk about the gear. For your armor, obviously you can run whatever you want. I think Bruiser is probably the best armor, the best bang for your buck out here. A full Bruiser set is going to give you 190 armor, and it's right under the cap of 65 because we have strongback. All right, I actually went back to Ward and re-rolled my campaign because I forgot that I was in the DLC, so I had that reduction in armor, the 15% reduction in armor, Lydusa's Curse. So now we don't have that anymore. So wearing the full Bruiser set is going to give us 210 armor for just under that 65 weight. So we still have a medium dodge, which is what I prefer to run with. Obviously, armor's armor, use whatever you want. For our relic, we're using the Tranquil Heart. I absolutely love this relic. I use it for almost all my builds. I tried the Lifesteal one, the Profane Heart, which I have a video on, by the way. I didn't really like it as much as just having the regular health regen. We have so much health regen coming at us with our archetypes as well. It just kind of synergizes really nicely. For fragments on it, I have range, crit chance, skill damage, and elemental damage. Then for our weapons, we've got Monolith, which is the brand new weapon. I have a video on how to get that from Lydusa. The mod is Sandstorm, which is going to give you another storm to add in to all of our storms we're doing here. You're going to be doing elemental damage per second. It's also going to debuff the enemy by giving them the exposed debuff, which the target will receive 15% additional damage from all sources. So you're going to be benefiting your allies, your mods, your skills, your dog, everything does 15% more damage when they have exposed on them. Your gun is also going to apply exposed. And then I like to use the mod 1000 Cuts just because this gun takes forever to reload. And so I like to reduce the reload because you need the gun to be reloaded, or you need ammo in the weapon in order to throw out the sandstorm. So sometimes you get in a spot where you need to reload and then you want to put the sandstorm down and it just gets kind of awkward. So I like having 1000 Cuts on there. We also have a pretty good amount of crit chance, so 1000 Cuts is going to be able to stack up pretty high. Melee doesn't really matter that much. I don't use it that much. Krell Axe would be great for the elemental damage with the shock, or you could run something like World's Edge and you could put Tainted Blade on it. You could actually even try Crystal Staff with the elemental damage, or you could even try Mirage, would be pretty cool too to have another storm. Then for our handgun, we're using the Tech 22. You can really use whatever you want, but something that you can put a mod on, so just a regular weapon. We're using Firestorm. I know this one, people hate this in co-op, but with kinship, with the 80%, you really don't take that much damage at all, and you're healing your team, so I feel like it kind of negates it. But Firestorm is going to be a whirling cyclone, and it's going to do fire damage per second. And then on my pistol, I've got fetid wounds to do corrosive because that's going to be another debuff on the enemy as well. So we're going to have our exposed and our corrosive on there, and then we're going to have our firestorm, our sandstorm, and our little lightning storm skill just running around on the enemies. Now let's take a look at the jewelry. For the amulet, I have Cost of Betrayal, reducing our relic charge to 1, increases all damage by 25% when you have 1 relic charge, which is all the time because it's reducing it to 1. And then if you use that relic charge, it's going to increase incoming damage by 25% when the wearer has no relic charge, and then it'll give you that relic charge back. So we do not want to use our relic charge with this build, with this necklace. So if you are somebody that likes to use relics, you could definitely use something else, like Jester's Bell would be a great option. If you're really good at never taking damage, you could use Necklace of Supremacy, which is going to give you a bonus of 30% when your health is full. There's lots of different options if you do want to use your relic, but I feel like for doing nothing, 25% is pretty good. So that's why I chose this one. And it's also all damage. So we're going to get skill damage, we're going to get mod damage, we get range damage, we get a bonus to everything with this. So it's not just skill or mod specific. Next, we're using Burden of Destroyer, decreasing the range of our firearms, but increasing all damage by 15%. I think that this burden is worth it. However, you could also use something like Burden of the Departed and get 10% and reduce your relic charges, because obviously you're already down at 1, so it's not going to reduce it any more than that. So that burden would be negated and you would get an all damage of that. So that's an option too. Next is Stone of Malevolence. Now this is going to give us 15% additional mod power when we do elemental damage. We are always doing elemental damage with our Way of Kaula, our sandstorm, our firestorm. Everything is doing elemental damage. So this is a really, really excellent ring to run. I did try leaking gemstone right here, allowing 20% of mod power generation to continue during an active mod, but I found that getting mod power with elemental damage was just better, so we went with that one. And then next we've got Burden of the Siolus. This is going to reduce our ammo reserves but increases mod and skill damage by 15%, putting more into our mod and skill damage. For the last ring, we're going to be using Token of Favor, which increases our all damage by 5% and gives us 10% critical chance against exposed targets, which we're going to be exposing them all the time with our weapon and our sandstorm. So that is the build. Basically, you're just going to be spamming skills, spamming your mods, and doing some range damage here and there. Nothing crazy, but it's looking pretty good in my opinion. And our mods come back really, really fast here. I've seen some crit hits from the skill itself, from the shock damage, doing upwards of like 3,000 or 4,000 in some of the video footage. Hopefully I'll be putting that in here now. This build has been a ton of fun to run solo and in co-op. I've been amazed at how quickly it's taking out bosses and dealing with mobs and just making a lot of apocalypse content just completely easy, and it's been a lot of fun. So I'm probably going to be farming some aberrations, try to get some corrupted shards, because I still have quite a few of those weapons to get myself. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video and the build. If you try it out, let me know what you think down in the comments below, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.